Welcome to the show, everybody. Well, mosques in Britain and clans from Pakistan are directing how people in elections in the UK vote. That is the sensational claims by Reform MP Danny Kruger made in the House of Commons. Have a look at this.
We're talking about people taking their orders on how to vote from mosques and from clans, often direct from Pakistan. We are seeing the criminal abuse of democracy by Labour. Let me finish the point. I certainly give way to both gentlemen. We're seeing the criminal abuse of British democracy by Labour and now by the Green Party, which has been this malignant new force, has now occupied, having its last force.
Yes, he said it was criminal abuse of our democracy by a malignant new force operating in some constituencies. And that seemed to seriously upset Magic Grandpa, Magic Santa, whatever you want to call him, Jeremy Corbyn.
I thank the member for giving way. He's just made the most extraordinary allegation about an electoral process last week, in which he's suggesting that 12% of all votes are somehow or other invalid because of pressure that he claims is put on them. Has he got any real evidence of this, or is this just an easy assertion to make to grab some headlines in the social media and elsewhere today?
Danny Kruger. The honourable gentleman, this is absolutely right that we have this debate, and I'm citing evidence provided by Democracy Voices, the independent observers who were present in these polling stations last week.
Of course, this is all in reference to the seriously concerning scenes as described by democracy volunteers at polling booths during the by-election in Gorton and Denton last week. But it left me thinking this. How prolific is sectarianism in British politics? And are some parties throwing stones in glass houses? Should we start with Labour? Here's a clip of GB News report we did 3 years ago by Charlie Peters.
Zindabad, 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 Zindabad.
Here's footage we've uncovered of 2 Labour councillors engaged in sectarian chanting in Walsall. That's Councillor Kazar Hussain, the deputy leader of the Labour group in the West Midlands town. He's chanting at a group of Ahmadi Muslims, a persecuted minority sect who regularly gather in Walsall to promote their faith.
Zindabad, Zindabad.
Mr. Hussain is chanting "Long live the finality of the Prophet" towards the Ahmadis, who believe in the possibility of future prophets. The leader of the Labour group, Aftab Nawaz, was also present at the incident.
There you go, that's one example. And here's Scottish Labour leader Anna Sawar standing in front of a Pakistani flag, urging South Asians to take power.
We will only truly get real power if we just have more Pakistanis sitting in council chambers and parliaments, but actually having more Pakistanis and South Asians sitting in the corridors of power making the decisions. And that's where I'll end tonight, is to say the change is coming.
I'm not sure much of this surprises you, but let's have a look at the Conservative Party. Are they totally innocent in all of this?
Do you remember this Tory campaign video?
Boris Johnson, Boris Johnson.
Brexit को भी सुलझाना है, Boris को PM बनाना है.
Yeah, not sure they are. And I'm sure also many of you have already seen this clip, but that's... well, let me just show it to you again, the one in Urdu from the Green Party in the latest by-election, shall we?
को Gorton और Denton एक जुल्म सियासतदान जीत सकता है अगर हम रिफॉर्म को रोकने के लिए ग्रीन को वोट ना दें.
Well, it does beg the question, doesn't it? Is Danny Kruger right to say some communities are getting their voting instructions from mosques and clans in Pakistan? Or is the truth far less sensational than all of that? Shall we ask...
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just live in credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponise against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
My panel here tonight, because I've got a brilliant panel with me. Broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee is joining me this evening. Reform MP Andrew Rosindell is here, and former Labour advisor Paul Richards. Andrew, I'll start with you on this. Of course, I interviewed Matthew Goodwin just a couple of days ago on Patrick Christie's Tonight here in the studio. He was making claims, not quite as sensational as saying that there's direct instructions coming from mosques, but he was really concerned about the rise of sectarianism, and he particularly spoke about the Gorton and Denton by-election. Do you share similar concerns?
I do, and clearly in Gorton and Denton there was an organised effort by the Green Party to attract the Muslim vote. Now, I have no problem with people of any religion, but people should vote on British issues, on matters that affect the constituency, and on what we want for our country. It shouldn't be a way of people of another nationality trying to influence what goes on in this country. And sectarian politics is now a reality. We have several members of parliament that were elected on a sectarian platform, the so-called Gaza Independence, supported by Jeremy Corbyn. I think this is a very worrying step in our democracy that this is now happening, and potentially could happen in multiple constituencies across the country. So this is something we need to be very firm on. If you are British, if you vote in a British election, you are voting about this country and the interests of our nation, not other countries with other issues that may be important to them, but what matters actually is the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you there, Andrew. Linda, it's quite a big claim Danny Kruger was making in that, and you could see Jeremy Corbyn was very upset by it. He sort of startled as soon as he heard the phrase, but there's got to be something in it, hasn't there? Because mosques aren't just religious centres, they're also community centres.
No, that's completely true. And I sometimes say to you, Alex, that I did a project, a communications project for an Afghan charity. So I used to occasionally go to the mosque. And you're quite right, it's not just a religious centre, it's a hub for the community. And I don't know why it's such a hard stretch to believe that the mosque is not advising people how to vote, because they advise on many other areas of life. So why would this be any different? I mean, I literally, when I ran campaigns, PR campaigns for them, it all had to go through the mosque. Otherwise, we weren't allowed to use the images we want, the texts we want, or anything else. The other thing is, I know perfectly well that Afghan men persuade, maybe they even coerce their wives in how to vote. Obviously, that is something they are used to. That's culture. I mean, someone's going to shoot me down for saying this, but it is culturally what happens. So I don't understand why someone has a big problem believing that this exists. And the democracy volunteers, the only thing that surprises me is it took that long to actually prove and evidence what was going on, because we know perfectly well this has happened in other elections.
Yeah.
And actually, Andrew's quite right. In this country, we need to be voting on the issues that affect this country, and we need actually all campaigning should be done in our language. Otherwise, why would you put forward, for example, plans to test people coming into this country for A-level English if you've got to produce everything in Urdu?
Do you know what really concerns me, Linda, is that if something is in a different language, spoken or written, how can actually British people understand what that candidate's standing for?
Well, no, they won't understand
Very
it.
disturbing to me, but that I, as a British person, might not understand literature coming out of any candidate in Britain.
Every time I come in here, well, not necessarily with you on a Saturday, but I come in on the Elizabeth line, I go through Southall, and there is a signpost. It's in Urdu, it's in English. It's in both languages. We both know where we are. But you cannot do a speech or a campaign, particularly a speech, where it's solely in Urdu.
Totally agree with you, Linda. Paul, I personally think your party actually started all of this, and the Green Party have outflanked you on it, and Keir Starmer basically condemned it in the House of Commons the other day, but then a couple of days later he's at a Ramadan event talking about the war, which has nothing to do with a religious event. He's just as guilty, the party. I'm not saying you, Paul, but the party is guilty of throwing stones in glass houses.
I'm looking at a fairly sort of grizzled collection of campaigners on this here panel. We've all been through several elections, I suspect, between us. There is absolutely nothing new in what is being described here, nor is it unique to mosques.
No, I did point to the Hindu campaign for Boris Johnson.
Going back to the 50s and 60s, the Catholic priests were telling the Irish people how to vote.
Yeah.
Now, the danger with it is that you treat people as blocks and assume they're all going to vote the same way. You get like an identity politics. Andrew's right to say people should be voting on local issues, their own belief systems, their own values. And if you treat people like blocks, that is exactly the wrong thing to do. And interestingly, actually, they're talking about the by-election. It wasn't the fact that there was this sectarian block voting. It was that it dislocated itself from its traditional vote for Labour and voted for somebody else completely.
That's kind of my point.
So it's not
my point. I mean,
so there aren't.
That's another point.
And the second point I'll say is that if there is evidence of two people going into a polling booth together, then that should be called out every single time, because the original Chartist demand was for the secret ballot, and there should be no influence, either bribery or bullying, to get you to vote in a certain way.
Let me just come back to Andrew briefly. Do you disagree with anything Paul said there, Andrew?
No, I think there's a consensus here generally, but I think that this is against the way we do things in Britain. And it seems to me like a culture from other countries is being brought to this country, and we're meant to sit back and accept it. No, we're not. I think we've seen in this by-election, it's brought it to a head that sectarian politics is not acceptable in the United Kingdom, and it calls into question, as Nigel Farage has rightly said, why is it that we allow citizens of countries, to vote in our elections when they're not even British citizens? I'm pro the Commonwealth, but I don't believe that if you are, particularly because you're a Commonwealth citizen, you should automatically vote.
Well, isn't that because you're paying your taxes and getting the services and using the health service and so on?
Commonwealth citizens have direct rights to vote when other citizens don't.
If they live here.
They should only be British, surely.
If they live here and they're using the services, why not? I mean,
not in a general election.
They should be allowed
British
to...
national.
Unfortunately, Paul, I totally agree with Andrew and
But
Linda
no taxation without representation is the old slogan, isn't it?
All right, there we go. Listen, we've got to leave it there. The Green Party hit back at Reform's criticisms, by the way, with the spokesman saying this. This is an attempt to undermine the democratic result and is straight out of the Trump playbook. We've just won a historic by-election by a comfortable margin. We've shown the country that Greens can beat Reform despite their big business donations. All right, time now for our biggest